Yes, I had to do an extra long one there. We are back. This is the Shutdown Inning Podcast. We have not been on for a little bit, but we are back here in the middle to end of April. Stephen Rissotto here along with Tylor Hall, as always. Tyler, what's going on?
Hey, everybody. Just doing pretty good. Yeah, I had a little bit of a break, had to make a trip down to Texas for some family stuff. And then Steven turned the big 21 over the weekend. So we had to take a break for that. How'd you celebrate, man? How'd it go?
Yeah, please hold your applause. Yeah, no, 21. Yeah, I mean, I can't say I feel any different, but I will say I went to the Giants game. I didn't cover the game. I went to the Giants game as a fan with a few buddies of mine. And we were walking behind the center field scoreboard. And as you know, there are some drink options behind the center field scoreboard.
Yes,
And
there are.
I looked and I was like, you know what, the canned margarita sounds good. So that's when I asked for the canned margarita. And when the guy asked for my ID, I said, okay, yeah, here it is. I was like, it was such a proud moment. So,
So that was your first purchase drink, the canned margarita at Oracle Park.
first purchase drink, canned margarita at Oracle Park, good stuff. And then the Giants ended up winning that game. And then afterwards went to dinner with a few friends, and then shout out to BJ's restaurant. And then got a few more drinks there. So I wasn't like totally destroyed
Do you
because
do you remember the whole day?
I do. I remember every bit of it. So
That's disappointing.
yeah, it probably not my style. Maybe every once in a while, but
We'll get you up to Sacramento with some of the Giants chatter guys, and we'll make sure you have a time you never remember. It'll be
yeah,
awesome.
we know they're listening for sure. But
But yeah,
um,
happy birthday, man. Glad you enjoyed it. Spending it at a ballpark is a good way to go.
yeah, and then I was there the next day too, taking in Sunday Night Baseball, covered that game, and um, the Giants split a series. I know there's some Giants people listening, so shout out to them.
Yeah. Winning two in a row. They're on fire right now. So,
Yeah. And speaking of teams that are on fire, I mean, we did not predict a whole lot out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
no, I mean, yeah, who would have thought? I think they're still in first place by like half a game, I think it is, over the Brewers. We're recording this Monday afternoon. So some games to be played. So depending on when this is listened to, but as of our recording, we're talking about the first place Pittsburgh Pirates on April 24th. I know I didn't think that was going to happen.
I can't say I did either, but everything's kind of going right for them. And the thing that I've been impressed most with has been how good their pitching has been. Because they've gotten some great production out of, Mitch Keller, who's just been really good for them. Um, Rich Hill's there and Vince Velasquez and a few other young guys, and their bullpen has been exceptional. I mean, I don't know where this came from, but I think the story with the offseason for Pittsburgh was the whole Brian Reynolds saga. And now,
Yeah.
like, is there some anticipation on like a Brian Reynolds extension? I mean, I feel like it would be fair to
Yeah.
speculate. I mean, they got guys on this team that are just coming through, like Connor Joe, Andrew McCutchen is hitting really well.
Yeah. Kutch has four bombs already.
Yeah,
So
pretty good start. I mean, again, you can't win a championship in April, but you could lose one, and the Pirates sure as hell
how,
aren't losing one.
how old is Andrew McCutchen again? Four home runs, three stolen bases, hitting 275 with a 381 on base percentage. I mean, talk about a little bit of a return to form there. I think Jack Sawinski's having a decent year so far. So yeah, I mean, like you said, obviously there's about 135, 140 games left, but would you rather start out hot or cold? The answer is hot. And so the Pirates are making it happen right now over in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it still feels like the season just started, so it's hard to believe that, over 20 games have been played.
Yeah.
But it is good to see. And back to McCutchen real quick, everybody's kind of treating this like his farewell season, but I don't think it's that at all. I think that guy
Yeah.
could play for a little longer. So
Yeah, he could definitely play for at least a couple more years. I think people just thought like, oh, he's just on paper, like looking at it like, okay, McCutchen, he's going home to get like one last season in. But I mean, he hasn't been. It's not like he's completely fallen off, in previous years, and he's shown that he's still got it, got plenty in the tank. He's only 36. He'll be 37 after the season. We see how all the extensions this offseason taking guys to their age 40, 41, 42 year. So Kutch could stick around for a while. Maybe him and Reynolds can anchor the outfield for another 2 or 3 years.
Maybe that would be interesting to see. But I mean, I guess if you were to point to one thing, it would be like the middle of the pack offense that they have. But if you look at the division as a whole, like the Cubs are playing really well too. And like the Cubs, as we're recording this, they're 12-9, and they had some acquisitions come in too. And the Brewers have been playing well, and the Cardinals have been, off to a little bit of a slow start. So, I mean, it is interesting to see some of the unorthodox teams
Yeah. I mean,
take
I think
over.
we both, preseason picked the Cardinals to win the division, and they're definitely floundering a little bit right now. So yeah, I mean, you never know. We could end up with some interesting playoff teams that not many people expected.
Yeah, yeah. I think it will eventually even out for Pittsburgh. But it's fun. Stuff like this is fun. Like the Rays, we talked about them a ton last episode. They're
Mm-hmm.
19-3. Have they even lost at home? Like I don't think they know how to do that. So
Yeah, they're 13-0 at home still. So, you know, uh, maybe they love the Trop. Everyone talks about how terrible it is to go to a game at the Trop, but the Rays are all about it. So,
incredible. Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible what the Rays are doing. And, I think they've homered in every game at this point. And they just got guys pitching. Like their pitching
yeah.
staff is just full of guys. So had to shout out the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're doing an unbelievable job. Um, Now, one thing that has been kind of the talk of baseball has been the sticky stuff. It's it a few years ago it was introduced how they were going to crack down on sticky stuff on pitchers' hands, and we kind of forgot about it a little bit last year. And this year, very early on, Max Scherzer is a name that was caught with supposedly something sticky. He was ejected from the game after umpires checked his hand. They found something sticky. He was thrown out, later suspended for 10 games. He wasn't going to appeal because he said that it was not worth appealing and MLB wouldn't do anything anyways. So that's what essentially 2 missed starts for Scherzer.
Yep.
But I mean, what did you think when you saw this? Because he's claiming it was rosin.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you like, at first I was pretty surprised because Scherzer is been around for a long time. He knows what's going on, and he's also pretty high up with the players union, and he's also been pretty vocal against some of the changes that have happened and how he hasn't really been for a lot of them. So at first I was like, okay, like I'm sure he's not really high on Major League Baseball's list of players they love right now. And if you did you listen to his post game interview? It sounds like he knew he was going to get inspected that inning because earlier in the game there was a little bit of buildup on his hands from using rosin. The rosin in his sweats had had a little bit of buildup. They told him to clean his hand, and one of the only ways to successfully clean that off without making your hands all clammy is using alcohol. And he said that someone from Major League Baseball went with observed him washing his hands with the alcohol. Next inning gets inspected and throws him out of the game. But it's like a known, at least I didn't know before this, but apparently within the ranks in Major League Baseball, it's known that alcohol is the only one of the best ways to clean it off. But it also, for at least a little bit, it makes your hand extremely sticky. So it's like, okay, they kind of set him up to fail here. If they told him go clean this stuff off, use alcohol, they watched him use it, and then you throw him out for using it.
Yeah,
I
what
don't
is
know.
that
It
league
just
official doing? Like what isn't that league official watching him try and wash this off, watching him use the alcohol, like monitoring this whole thing, and it just lets it happen?
yeah, like what are we doing if you're going to have the league oversee something and then the guy follows the instructions you tell him to follow and then you still throw him out for doing what you asked him to? That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And and at the same time, I believe Scherzer. Like 100, like there's certain times where like guys gain credibility. He's been a big voice in the players union. I don't think he would lie about something. I don't think that he would have any motivation to lie about anything. I mean, he's a guy that I feel, was using the sticky stuff along with everybody else. And then he was talking about how having to adjust wouldn't be easy. And he knows that these umpires check hands. And when he's saying that
Yeah.
it's rosin and sweat, when he's yelling on the mound, it's just rosin. I believe him, especially
Yeah.
after the game where he's talking to reporters and he's saying, I swear on my kids, it was rosin. Like
Yeah.
this
I
guy,
mean,
like you don't just swear on your kids. Scherzer's a big family man. We see all the pictures and everything. Like I believe him. I find myself believing him. And Phil
yeah.
Cuzzy, by the way, the umpire that did it, is the only umpire to ever throw anybody out for this, and it's like happened twice prior.
Yeah.
So
And like I think also if he were to choose a time to do it, I think he's smart enough that like the Mets are pretty short-handed right now
mhm.
in the rotation. I think he would choose his spots better, like maybe wait till a Justin Verlander's back and you're not already calling up, guys from AAA to fill your rotation. So there's just too much around it that makes me think that like he wasn't up to no good here, and that it was just I just think it was a totally weird situation that he, because the league after he said, here's the order, here's how it all happened. There's been no response from the umpires union, no response from the league. So that makes me think that he's telling the truth as far as how it went down. And so what's the point? And also, it kind of reminds me of like the whole steroid era and stuff. Like Max Scherzer's been a face in baseball for a long time. He's one of the most well-known players. Major League Baseball does such a good job of villainizing their superstars, where other leagues pump up their star players. Major League Baseball just loves to villainize their star players, and I'll never understand why.
And I'm of the belief that there should be a universal substance. Like these pitchers need something. Like, and
They
to
do. It's called a rosin, and they just
it's
threw out
called
one of the
rosin.
best players in
Exactly.
baseball for using
Exactly.
it.
And even if it's not rosin, even if it's like a step where it's like a rag behind the thing and it's got something on it. Maybe not pine tar, not spider tack, but there's got to be something. And rosin, you know, if you're gonna let them use, like, I wish they would have tested this. Like, I wish they would have tested it. They would have tested his hand or tested his glove or whatever, tested a ball, because that would have shown everything. But I 100% believe
Yeah.
Max Scherzer. It sucks that he's suspended. I don't blame him for not wanting to appeal, because what are they gonna do? Take a game off? That's what they usually do when a guy
Yeah.
appeals. Like
I
nine
mean,
games now.
but for a starting pitcher, dropping from 10 to 9 means you only miss one start instead of two.
Yeah, that's very true. And
It's
that's
also kind of weird with it being a
mhm.
starter because all players get paid via like game check. And
Yeah.
so like, he's missing like almost, what, 1/16th. Whereas, if it happened to a reliever, they'd probably suspend him like 3 or 4 games. So he's going to
Mhm.
miss, 3, 4 game checks. He's going to miss 10. So it's also a big blow monetarily. I mean, I'm sure Max will be fine, but for some other pitchers that might encounter this in the future, like that's a big chunk out of your salary gone too.
Yeah. And God bless David Cohn, by the way, because David Cohn did a breakdown on this on the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball telecast. And I gotta say, like
Yeah.
it takes some guts to do something like that. And David Cohn, a long time during his career, he was one of the guys during the 94 strike. He was one of the players that was leading the union and, technically working for ESPN, but Major League Baseball's in the loop with these broadcasts and all the production of Major League Baseball on their partnering networks. And
Yeah.
I saw a tweet the other day that said, Ken Rosenthal was booted for on MLB Network for talking about the league and everything and talking about Rob
Yeah.
Manfred during the lockout. Like David Cohn, I'm sure they're not happy with what happened with the David Cohn breakdown, but I thought it was
Yeah, for
funny.
those who haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend checking it out. But basically, in reference to the Max Scherzer interview that I kind of already talked about, David Cohn went and said, "Okay, I'm gonna put just a little bit of sweat and some rosin on my hand. Here's how sticky it is." He kind of held up a baseball
Mhm.
and then he's like, "Okay, well now I'm gonna wash it off with some alcohol," and he washed it off, and it stuck like even harder to his hand for a second. And so, yeah, so he basically said, that sounds like Scherzer has a very uh, straightforward, compelling explanation for things, and he did it on a national MLB broadcast. And yeah, definitely check it out if you're still kind of on the fence on how you're feeling or what your thoughts are on this Max Scherzer debacle.
Yeah, very, very fun. Very, very fun conversations to have. I mean, this was just the talk. It's all over my timeline pretty much. The David Cohn video a few days later, that's all over my timeline. And it sucks that ESPN has to talk about this during a different game.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's
But
gotta stay in the news loop somehow.
yeah. But, speaking of guys who have been suspended for actually cheating,
Nice.
Fernando Tatis Jr. is back with the Padres after over a year away now between his injury and his PED suspension. As far as, PEDs and the suspension, I look at it as he's kind of done his time. He's back now. He is a fun and exciting player to watch when he's back. He's already homered since he's returned. He's been back, I think, 3 games. I don't know. Have you been able to catch much Tatis action since he returned?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm very happy that he's back. I think that he is extremely good for baseball, and I think that as much as this suspension does hurt him and his actions in the past have hurt him, whether it be the motorcycle incident or whether it be the suspension, um, and I don't want to continue to dwell on the fact that they are the excuse that he's young and he's dumb. Because at the end of the day, he is getting paid a lot of money and he did earn that, extension. And he is supposed to be somewhat of a leader, not just on that team, but also, in that city. It's a baseball city now. And there's a lot of fans with Fernando Tatis jerseys. And I think he realizes that, hopefully, he realizes that this is his opportunity to get better, and I do feel like this is something that's going to be, I don't want to say forgotten about. It will never be forgotten about, or it will never be brushed aside either. But he's gonna get a chance to be in the conversation to be one of the best players in the game again. I really believe that. And I'm not worried about him hitting. He's gonna hit. But I think the
Yeah.
biggest test is his willingness to play right field. That to me is going to be the eye opener. If he puts in the effort, I honestly think the sky's the limit. But I'm glad that he's back. It's good for the game. And I don't think fans are going to use this against him in terms of, booing him or whatnot. Because I think there's a lot of variables went into the timing of when he was suspended and coming off injury. We don't know the motives, but I think for the most part, it's a very welcoming thing, or at least from my angle.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him back. I also, there's going to be fans everywhere he goes that'll give him a hard time,
Mhm.
probably for the whole rest of his career. He has I think 11 years left on his deal. If he stays healthy, he'll play even beyond that. I guarantee you in 2032, there's going to be some guy in Philadelphia who will be still yelling about when he got suspended in 2022. But, I'm pretty sure I'd have to go back and look, but I know for sure every team has had players using performance enhancing drugs, maybe even been suspended for it. So I think, like I said, he's served his suspension. He did his time. And now, enjoy watching him play baseball, hopefully for a long time. And hopefully he can stay healthy and on the field because he does bring a lot of excitement. I remember when I was watching the highlight for his home run, I was like, oh, is he going to do the stutter step around third again? And, yep, there it is. All right, he's back. And I mean, the only downside for me as a Giants fan is that he's going to play the Giants a lot, but not as much as he would have last year. But with the schedule change,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm excited to have him back. And I'm excited to see as a baseball fan what a healthy Padres lineup can do because they have a solid lineup down there now. And I think I mentioned it in a previous episode. It's like they traded for potentially a top 5 or 10 player in baseball.
Yeah, pretty
By
much.
getting Tatis back.
And I think that was the shock of it. It's like the whole shock of the suspension is I can't remember the last time, and I might eat my words because I'm not thinking at the moment, but when was the last time a guy of his caliber at that point in time was suspended? Like literally, presently a top 10 player. Have we ever seen a top 10 player at the moment be suspended? Like I mean I know Giants fans will bring up Melky Cabrera, but he was not on the level that Fernando Tatis was.
Yeah, I mean, I think when A-Rod got suspended, he was still pretty high up
Still
there, but
older
he was a little
player.
bit
Yeah.
older. But I think part of it too is I think a lot of people went for PEDs. They look at it as it's guys trying to cheat to get better, and a lot of guys
Yeah.
do it to get healthy and stay back on the field.
You never
And
know.
he was coming back from an injury, and I think Yeah, no one will, but I would assume it's probably more to try to get back and not say when I get back I want to be better. Like, no, he just wanted to get back.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, the motorcycle
Well, like I said,
crash,
we'll never know though.
yeah, the motorcycle crash, like maybe there's a part of him that really wanted to fast track it because he wanted to show up to spring training and act like it didn't happen. Right? So
Yeah.
because nobody knew until spring training. So I don't know. That's my theory on it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I know you aren't either. But we could be at certain times in this
Yeah.
podcast. So
Yeah, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But yeah, Tatis is back, after his minor league rehab. And look at that, ready for another 2-for-2 on transition, Steven.
oh, let's do it.
After his minor league rehab, there are some new rules that are going to be tested in the minor leagues, in the Atlantic League. The main two being a pinch runner. I forget the exact terminology that they're using for this, but basically you could have a guy come in to pinch run and then leave the game to re-enter later. So basically like a temporary. It's like if you've ever played rec league softball, it's like a courtesy runner. So you could have a courtesy runner. Wish they would have had that when Barry was still playing. And then the double hook, which is something I really like the double hook for a number of reasons. I wish they would have spent more time to maybe consider it when they implemented the universal DH instead of just going right to the universal DH. But those are the main two. I think there might be a third fringe one, but those are the two that have been getting most of the publicity. What are your thoughts on these new rule changes?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
That they're testing.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions with the pinch runner one, or the designated runner per se. Like would that runner be able to go and run for somebody else in the lineup? If he, like, say if he runs for a guy in the 7 spot, would we be able to see him again run for a guy in the 3 spot? Like, let's say he just came around the score. Can you put him back out there for someone? So
yeah, is it like once an inning, or is it like you can use him once a game as a runner, but then once he enters a second time, he's in the game? Like, yeah, there's a lot of wiggle room here that they need to talk about.
And I'm all for strategy, but I think that's just a stupid kind of strategy in my mind. I think that managers should not be thinking about where to move this guy around and take him out, put him back in. I don't think that screams big leagues. But I am with you with the double hook. Actually, I think that is actually a decent idea. And I think that is the right kind of strategy. So this is a tale of two tales for me. I guess that's not the right saying, but
a tale of two tales, blowing the roof off the place.
Blowing the roof off the place. Where it's like the free pinch runner, like so many questions. It's the stupid kind of strategy. Like we want to put strategy in, but we're not thinking through. And then the double hook is like the good kind of strategy where it's like it seems like more of like the critical thinking aspect when you're making a decision from a manager standpoint.
So really quick for people who aren't familiar with maybe the term double hook, what a double hook is essentially is you can have a DH to start the game as long as your starting pitcher remains in the game. And there's a wrinkle they're kind of putting into it. It sounds like where as long as the starting pitcher completes 5 innings, then the DH can stay the rest of the game. Where the previous version before they had gone full universal was have a DH as long as your starting pitcher's in the game. So if you like pulled your starter in the 7th, okay, you lift the DH. So I think I do like that little tweak that they're adding to say just get through the 5th. I think it'll add some value back to starting pitching because right now, I mean, we're seeing guys pulled very early all the time. So it basically killed the opener, which I'm all for. It will, get guys to go a little bit deeper in games. And, you're part of that out of necessity, but partially out of, you get to maybe one down in the top of the 5th. You're going to try to extend the leash on your starter for a little bit to try to get him through that 5th so you don't have to lose your designated hitter.
Yeah,
that's why
and what does that do for relief pitching too? I think because you're going to see guys that are going to get pinch hit, and I think you're going to see a lot more relievers. Because right now we're kind of in the era of the bulk reliever, and if that guy's due up to hit, MLB has put on the 3-batter minimum to prevent all these pitching changes. And I do agree that this would put emphasis on the starting pitcher going longer. That's what they want. But also, would there even be a point for a 3-batter minimum? Like that would be my next question. But my other question,
I think there would be because you wouldn't want a bunch of. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say that. I think my other question would be, and as much as I like the double hook rule, and I'm like about the free pinch runner, the designated pinch runner, who is asking for this? Like, is this something that somebody is asking for? Is this brought up? Like, because this is the problem that I have with baseball. Some of these rules, like the pitch clock, 100% needed to be there or in some capacity, whether you agree with the exact timing or not. The pace needed to be picked up. Like there's no question. And then there's some rules where it's like, who is asking for this? Like who I want to know who is asking for the not that it matters with the bases getting bigger, but like who asked for it? Who presented this as a pressing issue? Because I can't
Yeah,
think of
that
anybody for these two specific rules that are just like dying to fix this. Because it seems like it's just fixing something to fix something. It's not even
yeah, it
broken.
seems like I think like baseball is just trying too much to find new ways to do what they think will make the game more fun or exciting. And instead of just saying like where, if at all, do things need some tweaking and let's focus there. It just seems like they're like trying stuff out now just to try it without thinking, is this really making the game better? Who's it improving the game for? Because when I first saw it, like my first reaction was like, why? That was the
Mhm.
first thing I thought of when I read it was like, why? Like I just and even still, even though I'm a fan of the double hook, I'm just like you said, who's asking for this? Like what? Because it just seems like every year there's like 2 or 3 new rules that they're trying out in the Atlantic League, and I'm just some of them I do understand, like you mentioned, but so many times I'm just like, what? It's not even going to be. I mean, it will be baseball, but it's going to be so different. And I'm starting to sound like old man yelling at clouds a little bit, but it's just like shit. Like let some of these new rules shake out for a year or two to see maybe where you could
Mhm.
tweak a few other things instead of just like every year, let's try this, let's test this, let's look at that. Just
Yeah.
like let the dust settle a little bit before we start talking about what are we changing next.
Yeah. And it will still be baseball, but I also want to be able to recognize like baseball, And I'm not saying again, that sounds very get off my lawnish like you mentioned, but like I mentioned the pitch clock and I'll mention the shift too very briefly. Like at that point it's visible that it's changing the game and maybe something needs to be done or something doesn't need to be done. But this one it's just like I've never sat like because I've sat and watched a game and gone, okay, the pace is bad. I've sat and watched a game and said, okay, that should have been a base hit, but a guy standing in shallow right field. But I've never sat at a game and said, oh, I wish, they could have a pinch run or whatever they want. You know,
Yeah.
I just it just it's a different level of like necessity when it comes to these rule changes. And this one's just like, oh, well, we haven't had a rule change in about 9 months. Let's add one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it
yeah.
goes, but
If it was something
uh
that was pressing or something had happened, like the home plate collision, something happened, a bunch of these were, guys were getting hurt, pressing issue. Boom, we need to fix something. This one, it's like, what value are you going to add to your roster? Just a ton of guys that aren't able to hit and could only run, you know?
yeah, I mean
Don't you
I
like the
think a
quality
lot
of offense to go up?
I agree. To be honest, I thought the next big thing we are going to see would be, trying out the robot umps a little
Mhm.
bit more. So I was pretty surprised that it was free pinch runners for everybody and double hook.
Yeah. I wonder if yeah, I want to see if like we see a guy score twice, like consecutively, like he comes around the score. Oh, go back out there, go to first. Like that would be crazy.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're going to have to do some. I'm assuming it'd have to be like limited to like a guy can pinch run, once, and then once he re-enters the second time he's out. Otherwise, it's going to be like a basketball game or a hockey game, which is nothing against those two sports, but it's
Mhm.
different from like, okay, you can sub a guy in and out.
Yeah.
Baseball's never been that way for a number of reasons. I don't think it'll ever be a time to actually like do that. Otherwise, what's the point of substitutions? You'll basically have a offensive lineup and a defensive lineup if you
Yeah.
start allowing that. And even then, even with this little wrinkle with the pinch runners, you'll have like a defensive lineup and offensive
Mhm.
lineup, and then rotating substitutions on your offensive lineup. So it can
Yeah.
open a can of worms that gets out, a slippery slope really quick if baseball just thinks very short term like they tend to like to do, I feel like.
Yeah. Too complicated in my mind. You're trying to get young
Yeah.
fans in the game, you don't want to overcomplicate it. So, uh,
Yeah.
And speaking of complicatedness, I mean,
And speaking of complicated and the minor leagues, the Oakland A's.
oh man, yeah,
Uh,
the Oakland A's announcing that they have, or at least trying to buy land, or have agreed to buy land. Is this thing done? Not done. They have not broke
not
ground.
yeah, they've agreed to a deal to purchase land in Las Vegas to build, I think, a $1.5 billion stadium. And since that news broke, the city of Oakland has just come out and said, okay, well, we're not even going to talk to the A's anymore because at this point we're just leverage for them to get more out of Vegas, and we're not going to be a pawn for you guys. It just sucks, man. We're in Northern
Mhm.
California, obviously, so a lot of our listeners are as well, and a lot of those are Giants fans. But even if you're a Giants fan, it's terrible to see this happen. Especially if you're a fan around my age or older, and you remember when you thought the Giants had played their last game in San Francisco. It sucks to have anyone lose their team and have them relocate, especially when you can feel like that maybe the team wasn't always operating in good faith to actually try to stay, which I think is quite obviously the case with the A's not really trying to stay in Oakland, unfortunately. So it's really sad for baseball. It's sad for Oakland A's fans. It's sad for Northern California baseball fans.
Yeah, this does suck, and I think you nailed it. Bay Area sports, for a very long time, the A's have been a staple, and it's weird because the history of the A's is just so interesting. And they get here, they've been around for a while. They were just, they had those dynasty years in the 70s. They were good in the late 80s. They had the Moneyball stretch as the trailblazer. They always had good teams in the early 2000s. 2010s, they've put competitive teams on the field. They have. Um,
Yeah.
so, and as much as we want to talk about attendance, like there are fans of the Oakland A's that are diehard fans. And,
Yeah.
it's one thing to criticize them for not coming out, but it's another thing to move the team completely and then criticize them for not coming. Like there's a
Well, yeah.
reason they're not coming out. It's because the ownership of the Oakland A's, it seems like, especially recently, have, had Vegas on their mind instead of putting a team on the field. And it
Yeah.
sucks. And I don't
Well, I
even
mean,
think
and you could
yeah.
argue that with Vegas on the mind, that's why they put such a crappy product on the field, because they're like the worst team we can put
Yeah.
on the field. The less people show up, the more we can say, well, the fans aren't
Mhm.
supporting us, and then we're on our way to Las Vegas. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks like they've played this route for a long time. Even Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, came out in the last day or two and said that the A's basically cost the Raiders a chance to stay in Oakland because they signed a 10-year lease to basically buy time to get their act out of town.
Mhm.
And that put a bunch of holds because they were the longest tenant at the Coliseum, and so it blocked the Raiders from improving the stadium. It blocked them from being able to look at other areas in Oakland to build for the Raiders. So I mean, really, the A's have done a number on Oakland professional
Mhm.
sports.
And when you make a move, and I have never seen it, I don't, well, there's been a relocation that's happened in my lifetime, Montreal to Washington, but I don't remember it obviously. But I'd imagine when something like this happens, it's not just a year or two thing before, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the whole rooted in, just thinking about this, the rooted in Oakland slogan that the A's ownership came up with, I'd imagine Vegas was on their mind even back then. So they're putting out a
Oh,
slogan called
absolutely.
Rooted in Oakland, knowing that they're actively pursuing options to not be rooted in Oakland. And
Yeah.
I think the way they treat their fans, and just look at the ballpark, Oakland Coliseum, the local people defend it to a point, but nationally and even locally to some extent, it's not looked fondly on. And it's not even like, there are some big issues obviously that can't be fixed just because they've let it go so much in the age of the stadium. But little things like seeing a rat in the visiting broadcast booth, like they don't even care
Well,
anymore.
no, it came out like a week ago that like the visiting broadcast teams can't even call games from the visitors broadcast booth because there's a possum living in the walls of the
Christ.
broadcast booth. Yeah, it's just
They don't care
there's
about the fan
been
experience. And if they
there's
did,
been
yeah.
sewage backed up in the dugouts. Like they've had to, like, the A's and their visiting opponent have had to like share showers after the game because the visiting team can't even use their locker room. The A's have done basically everything they could to build excuses for themselves to get out of Oakland, and it
it,
really
it
sucks.
it could be a viable stadium. It honestly could be a viable stadium if they put any effort into it at all. If
Yeah,
they put any little effort into it at all, any money into it at all, but they don't want to do it,
yeah,
And there is a lot of blame to go around the situation. There's blame, a little bit maybe to the local politicians. However, as hard as it is to develop any big thing in California on, especially, publicly and privately, California's built stadiums, a bunch of them in the last
yeah.
10 years. Levi Stadium, Chase Center, SoFi. I mean, I don't think it's a government issue as much as it is the A's weren't actually serious about, building a stadium in Oakland or near
Yeah,
Oakland.
I think they wanted to get to Vegas. And, you mentioned that it's not like a 1 or 2 year thing to decide to move. It's also not a 1 or 2 year thing to move because now they're saying that, if their goal is to have their new stadium in Vegas open for the 2027 season. So that means the A's are going to have to play 4 more years in Oakland. And who the hell is going to want to pay money to go see the A's play with them heading out of town? First of all, they're on pace for 31 wins this year. They've won 4 games so far, I think. So not an exciting product to watch. Like I think they might have to look into like moving I think it's the A's AAA team in Vegas. They might have to look to like move that team and play the A's in Vegas as early as next year or 2025 in the AAA stadium, and just otherwise they're going to be playing in front of like hundreds of fans,
You
not
can't,
thousands of
yeah,
fans.
you cannot wait for you. You can't play 4 years in that ball. Like you, the ballpark, like you can't. It needs to
Yeah.
happen now. Like even if they play at a AAA ballpark or a place with 20,000, 15,000 seats or whatever, uh, you can't play at that ballpark any longer. Like not because it's a not because it's like it's literally embarrassing for Major League Baseball to have this as a venue. Like literally embarrassing. Especially
Yeah.
with the A's not putting any work into it. And I hate to say this, but like the San Francisco Giants, like as much as we feel bad and as much as we, feel like it's a one-sided rivalry, because I think it is, it should be more of a fun rivalry because geographically speaking. But the Giants have blame on this too. Like they do not have, they have blood on their hands. Plenty of blood on their hands too with the way that this went down. Because the A's could easily be playing in San Jose, which is a very big city, one of the biggest in California, and the Giants blocked it. And I think that could have been the beginning of the end. So there's so much blame to go around here, but the main blame is the A's front office and how they completely mess this up. They don't care about the fans. They don't at all. They don't care about putting a team on the field. Um, and I hope this is a long shot, but I hope we get a Peter McGowan situation and somebody puts in the team's not for sale, but it would be great if somebody tried to get that team and keep it
Yeah,
in the Bay
it
Area.
did kind of remind me about, and it's kind of timely with the Kings and Warriors playing each other, but I grew up a Sacramento Kings fan, and the Maloofs basically ran the team into the ground. They made a bunch of money from when the team got really good. Sacramento was selling out Arco before the
Mhm.
Kings were even a good team, raked in a bunch of money when the team got good. That era passed. They stopped putting money into the team. They stopped putting money into the arena. It looked like the Kings had played their last game in Sacramento. And then Vivek bought the team, built them a new arena downtown. And, now, they're playing playoff basketball in a new arena downtown and revitalized their downtown Sacramento quite a bit. So, yeah, maybe if that could happen, I hope it can for the A's and their fans because,
Yeah.
yeah, it just sucks.
And John Fisher publicly trying to get a ballpark instead of, wanting, oh, God forbid a billionaire spends his money to build a stadium for his team. I don't know. The whole thing's just
Yeah,
discombobulated.
I never really bat my eyes or think too much or feel too bad for an MLB owner when they talk about how expensive it is to
Mhm.
run a team or whatever, because every team's worth at least $1 billion. That's a billion with a B, every one of them. And so, and if it came out like right around opening day, Forbes, did their annual valuation of franchises and how much they're worth and what their
Mhm.
profitability was last year. And the A's were top 5 in profitability because they're making a bunch of revenue sharing money and they're not reinvesting it in their team or in their ballpark. And so they're making top 5 in baseball. There was their profitability last year.
Yeah. I hope this team plays well, and I hope that the stadium fills up, and I hope that by the end of this, before they move in 2027 or whatever it may be, the A's are a freaking baseball, you know, destination. I doubt it would happen just because, again, the current ownership is incompetent of caring about the fans, but
Yeah.
I hope they just go out strong. I really do. Um, anyways, we debuted a segment last episode, and we're gonna do it again. Three up, three down, where we list three winners, kind of, and three losers. And we're gonna do this since we recorded last. So do you want me to go first with my three ups?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first three up is Drew Maggi. So I want to send congratulations to Drew Maggi, the Pittsburgh Pirates 33-year-old infielder who has bounced around the minor leagues, played a ton of minor league games since 2010, and is finally getting his chance in the big leagues. If you haven't checked out the video, go check it out of him being called up. Just a guy who is a baseball lifer. He's been in spring training with them for a handful of years. He's been kind of stuck at the minor league level as a depth piece, and he's finally making it not just to the Pittsburgh Pirates, but to a good Pittsburgh Pirates team, as we mentioned earlier in the episode. So, good
Yeah.
congrats to Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like almost 1,200 minor league games
Mhm.
played. And it seems like every few years you get a guy like this who's just been in the minors and never gave up on their dream, and now he gets to put on a big league uniform. And I think it's also really cool that like you mentioned, it is the Pirates, and so usually it's just like, okay, we're not a good
Mhm.
team right now. We need to call up some other guys. But hey, they're playing good baseball right now, and so they're not just looking at this as like, let's toss this guy a bone. They're looking at it as he can help us win games and keep this rolling. So I think it'll be awesome that he's not just getting thrown in to play for a last place team. He's playing for a first place team, and hopefully his debut and will be the first of many. I guess as many as you can. I think he's like a 33-year-old rookie. So
Mhm.
however many years he has left, hopefully a lot of that can be at the big league level.
Yeah, and whenever I think of something like this, I always think that there's only one reason he could have kept playing, and it's because he loves baseball. Otherwise, he would have been done a long time ago.
Or he
Um,
loves bus rides.
or he loves bus rides. That's also true. Um, yeah, the bus rides are no joke there. Or he likes the idea that he might be getting paid more coming up here. So,
Yeah. But
um,
I'm going to go with loves baseball.
yeah, loves
So
baseball, no doubt.
congratulations for sure.
Congratulations. Um, my other up is a guy that's just been tearing it up, and I know, of course, Giants fans are probably listening once again. But
They're going to
Max
pucker up when
Muncy,
they hear this. Yeah.
Max Muncy, since we last recorded, he's played in 13 games, 10 plate appearances, 10 homers, 19 RBIs. This guy's his weighted runs created plus is 312. That's 212% above the league average. He's tearing it up. He's leading this Dodgers offense. And as underwhelming as the Dodgers may be compared to their usual teams, he has not slowed down. So he is my one of my ups for three up, three down.
Yeah. I mean, I
Killing
think
it.
he's tied with Alonso for the most home runs. I think they're both still sitting at 10. I think Muncy started that little hot streak against the Giants, so I got a good view of that. I think he hit 4 home runs in 3 games or
Yeah.
something, and he didn't even play the middle game. Yeah, I'm not surprised he's on your up. Uh, I'll leave it at that because
Yeah.
damn Dodgers.
You don't want to get too controversial on here. You have people that like you. Um, and then my final up is actually AJ Hinch, the manager of the Tigers. And the Tigers went through a stretch this week where they played well. They won like 4 or 5 straight. But more so, AJ Hinch made a move where Javier Baez was running the bases, and he ended up losing track of how many outs there were. Apparently, a few other things happened before then where this was not a standalone incident in the series against the Blue Jays. And AJ Hinch made sure to pull him and did not care that Baez is a 140 or so $1 million man. And I find that really awesome because at the end of the day, when somebody's lagging as a manager, you need to hold everybody accountable no matter, where they stand in their career. And Baez, when he's great, when he's on it, he's one of the most exciting players in the game. And we haven't seen that from him recently. And it was a time, that needed to be or it was a move that needed to be made in order to I guess keep the rest of the team engaged, because you got to treat everybody the same at some point, even though in baseball it's hard to imagine that everybody's all equal. So good wake up call for Baez. Hopefully he starts playing well. He is my I guess he's a downer for me, but AJ Hinch, I'm gonna give him the up.
Yeah, I think it's good that he sat a guy like Baez. They have a really young team. Obviously, they're trying to rebuild, and he's supposed to be the leader of that team, whether you think he should be or not. I mean, that's kind of what he signed up for. And, as a big league player or a professional baseball player, even no matter at what level, you can't be losing track of outs, especially if you're supposed to be a leader of a big league roster. And
I have been on teams before, and I'm sure people that have played baseball, and I'm sure you as well, Tyler, you could relate to this, having played in your youth 100 years ago. Um, um, when something like this happens to like a teammate, like you expect there to be repercussions. Like if I had a teammate that like lazily ran the first or lazily got thrown out at the plate or whatever, then I would expect the coach to do something, because I think it's an insult to the rest of the players on his team. So had to get that out. Yeah, I'm mixing up my words here. Had to get that out there. So
Yeah.
clap.
Yeah. And we've seen some people talk about, that it's a weak free agent class next year and Baez could opt out. And I don't see how he would opt out. I don't see how
Yeah.
he would get more than he's on the hook for the Tigers, especially after play like this. So, yeah, shout out to AJ Hinch for holding your superstar player accountable.
Yep. That's 3 up.
So yeah, I get that's 3 up, 3 down to complete the shutdown inning. The first one I had City of Oakland, and it's not anything that they've done wrong, and we've talked about the topic enough. I'm going to pivot it to the owners, Oakland A's. You guys suck, and what you have done to your own fan base. You're down, even though you're winning and you're getting what you want. I think you've shown your true colors throughout all of this, and you're going to go to Vegas and get your new ballpark and all your money, but you're down on the Shutdown Inning Podcast.
You're down. Yeah, no, agreed. And I think we said enough about the A's. I'm in complete agreement.
Yeah. So 2 down for me is Jeffrey Springs, starter for the Rays, off to an awesome start. I think his ERA was 0.5, and he's getting the good old Tommy John now, out for the rest of the year. Hopefully he can get back early in the year next year and bounce back. But that was a bummer. You never want to see anyone get hurt, but especially someone who's kind of a younger guy and establishing himself and having such a great year, even though it's early. But he's out number 2 for me.
This one definitely does suck. A guy who is kind of a journeyman in the Rays. He got traded to the Rays, turned his career around, in their pitching lab per se.
Yeah.
And I was looking forward to having him in fantasy baseball on a few different teams. And it sucks.
Yeah, luckily one of the guys Steven did not trade to me in fantasy baseball.
Did you trade me him?
No, I said luckily he's not one of the guys you traded me, because we've talked about some of the other trades we've made. So luckily
he's
still
time
on Steven's team.
He's now on the waiver wire.
Right. And then down number 3, got to tip the hat to Madison Bumgarner, who's DFA'd middle of last week. So he's now, I don't see him taking a AAA assignment from the Diamondbacks. So we'll see if he can get traded somewhere or find a new home in free agency. But, obviously a hell of a career. Hopefully it's not over, but it just hasn't been the same since he moved to the desert. So he's out or down number 3 for me. I'm sure you have some commentary there with him being a Giants legend, Steven.
Yeah, very sad what's going on with his career and the trajectory that it's gone down. Just a very quick downfall. And he hasn't pitched well since coming to Arizona. There's been flashes. We all remember that 7-inning no-hitter that he had. A few other good starts that he's mixed in, but when we saw the last appearance of him in a Diamondbacks uniform arguing with Wilson Contreras after Contreras, drumroll please, took a big swing off him. So Madison Bumgarner of 2023 can't be doing that because the act, in my mind, is old, especially when you're throwing high 80s and apparently teams have been talking about this to each other saying, oh, well, prepare for Madison Bumgarner like he's a position player pitching, which I'm sure is not a fun thing for Bumgarner to be heard, but baseball is a game of adjustments. And from the reports coming out, it seems like he's been very hesitant on adjusting anything. And that's not a good mentality to have as an athlete. And honestly, it's a losing mentality for a winning, individual, which is surprising. Like I'm surprised at this development. I'm surprised he hasn't adapted. And it is kind of disappointing because all of his percentile rankings, all of the numbers on Baseball Savant, they're as bad as it gets. Barrel percentage, guys are scoring him up. He's not getting swings and misses. He's not throwing hard. He's walking guys. He's not striking out guys. Just everything that guys aren't chasing. Everything that could be going wrong is. And again, just seems like a losing mentality for a winning player. And I hope it turns around and I hope he gets a job somewhere.
Yeah. Like I said, hopefully it's not the end of his career. I know that maybe this will be what needs to happen for him to make some of those adjustments. Because I do know of all the ways he wants his career to end, getting DFA'd is probably not one of them. So,
yeah.
But also I think it shows that, the Diamondbacks, they're off to a strong start. They're in first place in the NL West.
They're not messing around.
Hey, we can't have every 5th start being a guaranteed loss right now. So we need to make some moves here. Sorry, Madison. And so, so
we'll pay $34 million not to have you.
Yeah. It's always telling when a team says we would rather pay money for you not to play for us than to play for us. So,
yeah, God, tough contract. And another one that goes under one of the free agent starting pitchers, dump truck that is like 3 lists long at this point. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So 3 up, 3 down, shutdown inning. There we go.
Yeah. I think we shut it down, Tyler.
This was number 20, right? So
yeah, we're almost to Oral Hershiser.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're almost to 21, just like Steven. So
yeah,
we did it, man.
Yeah, almost to Tyler Rogers had a scoreless streak going. I think it was at 21 or something, 21 innings, and we're getting up there. So
yeah.
Again, almost to Oral Hershiser's consecutive. One of these days, we're gonna say at the end of an episode, "Oh, we gave up a base hit today, Tyler."
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Well, shutdown innings are scoreless, so you can give up a base runner or two. Just no runs allowed. We're shutting it down.
I don't think we've given up a base runner yet, so we've thrown like a few combined no hitters at this point.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, everybody can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram on Twitter at RizzoCast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your
at
podcast.
RizzoCast. You're an idiot.
Did I say at RizzoCast?
Yes.
Oh shoot.
At Shutdown _inning is the podcast you are listening to.
Spotify.
I don't know. Maybe you aren't as on it as you think you are since turning 21. How many
just know this.
spike propels have you had over there today, Mr. Rissotto?
I have done more shutdown innings this month than RizzoCasts. So, this is I'm committed to this, man.
Yeah, I hear you, Stevie screenshots.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
But shutdown _inning. Anywhere else you consume your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, on YouTube as well. Thank you all for listening.
We'll see you next time.
That's what's up.